All right. It is Friday afternoon, 3 p.m., and this is another episode of a live video, an attempt to broadcast something live onto Facebook. I hope you all can see this on Georgia's Space Chat. Um, it is quite a technical feat that I got going on here with the help of my partner. This is not easy. Anyway, I hope you're all well. I hope you're all doing whatever you can to stay safe and sane. I hope you all vote, and I hope you all already voted early. I did, and I highly encourage all of you to do that. Whoever is watching, and I know we have some repeat guests um, looking at this video. I want to shout out Sadi. What's going on? What's going on, Hashim, Alexis? I am so glad that you're all here. I want to thank you all for the continued support that you have all given to Georgia's Space Chat. This has been an incredible experience so far. And I believe that we are close to 900 members at Georgia Space Chat. So I cannot thank you all enough for tuning in every Friday and sharing this hour with me, this hour plus. Um, I thank you all for what's going on. Randy Landau, Beryl, nice, good to see you. Um, I want to thank you all for making the time to share your to making an effort to share your time with me. I hope you all get some good information out of this. This has definitely been a learning experience for me, and I will do my best to continue this as long as possible. I hope you all enjoyed uh, the first episode of the follow up with the great Branford Marsalis. And let me just publicly once again thank Branford for making the time. We had a great conversation, and he could not have been more generous with his time and with his answers, and trying to understand my bad English. So I really appreciate everything that he did. And let me just tell you all that I am working on some more follow-up videos that I think that if I can pull this off, the idea about these follow-ups is already blowing my mind, and I think there's some really interesting insights that can come from these. So fingers crossed that it all works out. um I Of course, I'd be missed to not to mention that today's video is a panel discussion, a panel conversation. This is Broadway Uncovered Part 2. Part 1 was 2 weeks ago with a great panel that included Francisco Centeno, Cherise Rogers, um, Shelton Gray, Conrad Adderley. Who else was on it? Forgive me if I forget, if I can't mention. Oh, Bobby Wooten, of course. Um, and many thanks to my guests from 2 weeks ago. And maybe this would be perhaps a good time to kind of just reiterate why I am doing these panels. These panels and these discussions are what I believe are important discussions, important conversations to have, um, especially since I live here in New York, um, and I am a professional musician, and as part of that, I do theater work. And for too long, I would go into theater pits, and I had a very hard time finding anybody who looked like me, who was not white, who was not male. So all of my guests defy the stereotype that you have to be white male in order to work in theater and work on Broadway. These guests are top players in the city. These guests have a long and very robust career outside of the theater world. Um, these guests also, and I want to add that to the last panel discussion. These guests are the bass players for some of the biggest shows that exist in Broadway history. Okay. Um, Conrad Adderley is the bass player for Wicked, and Wicked has been going for over 10 years. There are too many versions of that show out there to mention. Okay, from international productions to, I believe, two national tours. This is a big show. Okay, Bobby Wooten, and I'm not in, I'm going from jumping from one to the other. Bobby Wooten is playing David Byrne's Utopia and is playing Moulin Rouge at the same time. Of course, not literally at the same time, but is active in both of these shows. David Byrne's Utopia has just been made into a movie by Spike Lee. Okay, these are not small shows. These are not one-offs. Okay, that's kind of part of what I want to convey with these panel discussions. And the same can be said for Francisco Centeno, 5 years of Hairspray, aside from being Aretha Franklin's bass player for 20 years. Okay, so these are professionals at the top of their game who have been at the top of their game for a very long time. And hopefully, this message will hit or will, inspire people who look like us, Black players, female players, to perhaps see themselves represented in a musical theater pit, and therefore include this choice in their career planning. Because, you know, very often we, as not white players, not male players, are not represented. And, very often the kind of word on the street is that, well, I'm really not into playing any kind of musical theater work because I'm not going to get in anyway. Uh, I'm people kind of very easily adapt stereotypes that have been put on them for no reason aside from their gender and or color of their skin. And it was important for me to, it was and it still is important for me to show those players that no, there is a place for you in this environment. And here are the examples. And here are the examples of people who have done it for a very, very long time, who excel at their profession, who are the best of the best. And hopefully, this inspires some more players to, as I said, make this part of their career choice. That's really what this is all about. This was sort of this came out of a conversation that I had with Tom Barney, who is the bass player of The Lion King and who will join us today. And that was one of the inspirations for these panels, and the other one was from a show that I did called Fun Home, which won a bunch of Tonys, including Best New Musical, including Best Original Score, and the, uh, the composer of that show, Janine Tesori, um, made it very clear that if it hadn't been for no, Linda Twine, uh, if it hadn't been for her seeing Linda Twine win a Tony, she years ago, she would not have been inspired to get into this environment. So I'm hoping to do something like that as well. This is not to take anything away from anybody else. But I do need to mention, because I post advertisement for these panels and for my videos in a lot of sites, I do see the passive aggressive, mostly male and mostly white players commenting on this. And my only my only observation what that is concerned is, do you really think that you are that smart, that you can comment with the name of another yet white player on a post that is decidedly geared towards black players. Do you really think you're that smart? Do you really think that your passive aggressive behavior is not being seen for what it is? Because I got news for you, buddy. And I don't mean buddy as a friend. I do see you and I know who you are. And, do you, player? That's all I got to say to that. But don't think for a second that because if I see you and if I see where you're coming from, I'm not the only one. So maybe rethink where you're coming from. Maybe try to open your mind. Maybe understand that change is inevitable, and change is what keeps this universe going. And while you're at it, vote and vote blue. All right, enough of this. This panel is about to start. I want to invite. I got a couple people in the waiting room. Excuse my English. So let's see who is here. Here we go. All right. Here we got. Awesome. All right, everybody. Try to connect your audio. Try to unmute you. What's going on? Tom, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Tom Barney, can you hear me? Okay, let me move on. Winston Roye, can you hear me?
Hey, I sure can. Can you hear me?
Awesome, I can hear you. Irio O'Farrill, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Tom Barney, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we're all here.
Yes. Hey, guys, how you doing?
All right, everything is fine. Hey, we're all good.
All right.
We're all good. All right, we're still waiting for Melissa Slocum to join us. But once she's here, we kind of can get this started. Anyway, I wanted to thank you all for making yourselves available today. It means the world to me. It means a lot to the people out there who are watching. And I believe this is Melissa. Let me just get her in on this. Hey, what's going on, Melissa?
I made it.
Yes.
Very nice, very nice.
Awesome. All right. So as I said, I just did a little introduction, but I'm just going to repeat it for the sake of there are always people joining into these calls, not at the beginning. So this is I'm going to repeat certain things over and over. Just bear with me.
Sure.
These panels are sort of my attempt to showcase you guys. Showcase players who are working in the theater field, who are not the stereotypical white and male, right? And it is very important to kind of represent the fact that there are other players out there. And hopefully the idea behind representation is that other players who don't count themselves as white and male are inspired to make this theater music, to make this part of their career choice, or walk into it with the knowledge that I'm not going to be alone in this. Okay, I'm not going to stand out. I am part of this, just as much as everybody else. So having said that, that's sort of the premise of what we're trying to do here. Let me get started by proposing the same questions that I did two weeks ago. I'm going by for my own sake, believe me, I'm going by a very limited scope here. So, and that is, let's get started with how did you get into playing musical theater shows. And Tom, if you'd be so nice, let's get started with you.
Well, the first show I did, I was actually Crane School of Music. I was in college. It was my sophomore year,
Right.
and one of the guys he was kind of my mentor in school. He graduated, and he was from Long Island. His name was Greg Maker.
Okay.
Greg was a great bassist and classically trained, the whole deal. But anyway, so I introduced him to my dad.
Right.
And so my dad had gotten a call to do Raisin.
Right. Raisin in
And
the
so,
Sun.
yeah, so he gave it to Greg because, he was doing other things. So he gave the show to Greg. And so, when we're out for the summer break, that was my first show I'd done. And I did the show, till I had to go back to school.
Right. So basically, you came in by ways of an opportunity opening up, and you just took over the chair for some time. Also, I think it's important to let people know that your dad was the great Bob Cranshaw, and that's an important piece of information. Simply because he is, he was such an important figure in the New York musician scene, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
for all of us freelancers, kind of an important character to live up to, right?
Yeah.
And also for everyone who is listening in, Tom was the first bass player who gave me a chance on Broadway. So Tom was the one who I subbed for my first show, which was The Lion King, and that changed the world for me. There's just no two ways about that, right? So let me move on. Winston,
Yes.
what was your first show? How did you get into this?
Well, mine was a little bit off the beaten path. I just come from like playing, pop music, non-theater music, bands, touring, etc. And 2008, I was actually playing drums on a tour, and John Miller called me, and he said, "I got this show. It's going to be off Broadway called Rock of Ages. Would you be interested in doing it?" And I was like, "Sure. Let me know when the audition is, where I have to send a resume." He's like, "No, there's none of that. If you want to do it." And I was like, okay, sure. And I had always thought that theater was so hard to break into. I never even tried. So I was like, this can't really be on the level. So I talked to my friend John Clancy, who I was with, and I said, "Oh, this guy called me. He's just guy John Miller." He's like, "That's the big contractor," and that was it. He hung up the phone. He's like, "I'll call you in a couple months with like rehearsal time."
Right.
And then that's how it started. And I did Rock of Ages off Broadway. We did it for, I guess, maybe like 5 months.
Right.
And then they said, "Okay, we're going to transfer to Broadway."
Right.
And then I was like, oh, now I understand why it was so easy, because now they're going to use the Broadway guys. And then John was like, no, we're going to, you'll go with the show.
Right.
And that's how it started.
Right. I mean, that's an important, point to make, that very often if you do get called in for something that's off Broadway, chances are is that particular off Broadway theater has a contract that stipulates that you have what's called identity with the product. That means that when the show goes to the next stage, whatever that might be, they have to offer the job to you first, right? And that's like there's a plethora of misunderstandings and half truths that sort of fly around musician circles about what this job really means, right? But just understand, like, there is an actual contract and people have to obey by it. They will try stuff, but they still have to do it. So that's a very, very important insight. Melissa, let me you're next on my screen. Let me ask you, how did you get into this?
Well, it was a much more circuitous route for me.
Right.
I mean, I started out playing jazz for many years.
Right.
All I did. That's all I wanted to do.
Right.
And after I had my daughter, that changed things a little bit. So I went back to school and I started really studying classical bass, you know.
Right.
And at that time I had her, so I couldn't travel and make my living doing that. So I started trying to break into Broadway, which was seemingly impossible.
Right.
But finally I kept bugging Jeff Carney. He was doing Beauty and the Beast, and I finally gave him a gig. I gave him a one of my gigs that I couldn't make. And he said, okay, you can come down and play the show.
Mm.
So I came down and he said, this was a Friday night. He said, you want to play the show tomorrow afternoon?
Wow.
And I said, okay, which was not really the wisest thing to do. But
Right.
I did do it, and I got through. It was okay because, you know, I had heard this, the video, and my daughter watched the video a million times. So,
Mm.
and I made it through a couple of shows. Everything was cool. Everything was good. I'm like, okay, I'm in. It's going well, you know. And then the main conductor came back,
Mm.
and he didn't like my style.
Right.
So I was fired from that show.
Oh,
Mm.
And
Not
but
fair.
actually another woman bass player, Judy Sugarman,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
she said, you know, this is bullshit, whatever, you know. She took me under her wing. She called me up I was like, it was May, I was doing nothing. I had nothing. She said, look, I know John Beal needs a sub at Phantom. I know he needs a sub. Just call him up, say I recommended you. So I cold called John Beal, which is something I'm not good at. I didn't ever really want to do. But he was like, well, you know, I've just been gone. I don't know when I'm going to be, you know, have any time to let you come in because I'm going to be playing all these shows. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I went down, I watched the show, and I had some time to learn it,
Right.
fortunately.
Right.
Because I wasn't going to make the same mistake of, you know, feeling on, you know, I wanted to really know what I was doing. So I had some time, and then it all worked out.
Mm.
You
And
know?
now you've been with Phantom for how many years?
Well, I started in October of '99. Beal went on to another show, and somehow they gave me the gig.
Yeah. this is one thing that I would love for the audience to understand, that these panel members here are playing incredibly big shows. That is not to be underestimated. It you know, Tom is at the Lion King, which is the biggest grossing show of all time. There is nothing that's bigger. Okay. Melissa is playing the Phantom of the Opera, which is the longest running show in Broadway history. There's nothing bigger than that.
yeah.
Okay. It is very important to, you know, for players like us to see themselves represented, but also see themselves represented in a way where, okay, this is really what we're talking about. We're not talking about going in and you know, being in there for 6 months, you know, 3 months, however long. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but understand that these players are putting in the work night after night after night for decades. And that's an important distinction to make. Okay, I'm not saying one show is better than the other or anything. That doesn't exist. Okay, but to work year in and year out should be the goal of freelance musicians. Okay, and this is what's happening right here. Let's go to the next one. Irio O'Farrill, what's going on? How did you get
How you
started?
doing? Well, for me, you know, I started out subbing,
Right.
and at a time when I wasn't really necessarily like looking for a Broadway show gig. I was playing, freelancing around town a lot on the Latin jazz scene and the Brazilian scene and salsa scene and that kind of thing. And I happened to speak to a former college professor of mine, Nick Serrato, who's a percussionist, and he was also a conductor on, you know, different Broadway shows. And at the time, he was doing Starlight Express at the Gershwin, and where he was the percussionist and assistant conductor. And he, you know, he was talking to me about the show, and he gave my name to Jeff Gans, who was the bass player. on that show. And you know, me and Jeff got in contact, you know, and oddly enough, it was funny. I was a lot of people don't know this, but I used to be a trombone, bass trombone, and tuba player. So I was doing gigs on those.
All right.
And yeah, me and Jeff actually wound up on a gig together up in the Poconos with Rita Moreno, where he was playing bass and I was playing bass trombone. And we talked, and he asked me to come down and check it out, and that's where I started. I started subbing there, and then started subbing on the original Cats. And then I subbed on different shows for years before I ever actually got a call to have for my own show.
Right.
But it was fine because I was, you know, at that time I was doing a bunch of other things when there were other things to do.
Right. I mean, that's a very, very important. That's a very, very good point. That's the, you know, New York has, just like every other major music city, has lost a lot of its opportunities. Has lost a lot of its studio work. You know, that has gone down a lot to non-existent. You know, clubs. We are losing clubs every year. Yet. The one thing that is still incredibly vibrant, you know, with the exception of right now, because we are in a global pandemic. I mean, when does that ever happen? Nevertheless, the one thing
hopefully never again.
Exactly, hopefully never again. That's you know,
it's like 100-year flood.
Yeah. Wear a mask, for fuck's sake. So you know, the one thing that is still going on is live theater. You know, the one thing that has been going on for many years is live theater, and as such, this is a very important part of making a living as a freelance musician. It is interesting to me that, you know, the last panel that I did, and also this panel, all of you have very different backgrounds, right? All of you were strongly established as freelance players before going into theater music, or before adding theater music to your career, right? And I think that's a very important takeaway here for the audience. As such, because we always get and this is, you know, this is a touchy subject, but it needs to be talked about. We always get, especially, you know, Black musicians, female musicians, we always get sort of put into the category, okay, well, we need one of these people, you know, we need one of, you know, this the token Black person, exactly, token female musician, and all of that, right? That, you know, first of all, there needs to be like this shift of consciousness that we're talking about professional qualities when it comes to playing this gig, right? And these professional qualities are very necessary and very important. So my question to you guys is, what are professional qualities that put the focus of representation back to where it's supposed to be? You know, what are these qualities that you guys believe you have, or that you're looking for in other players? Who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
Ladies. Melissa, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about so many things when you were talking about that. Now my brain is all scattered.
It's all good. No. Believe me, I have been doing these videos since March. Okay, I am the world champion of bumbling. Okay,
okay. Well,
blah 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 blah. You know, and then there's this little bit of information. It's all good. You know, there is nothing here that. Don't even worry about it.
Well, one thing I was thinking about when you were talking was that, you know, I wanted to be in Broadway because I thought I'd get a fairer shake playing Broadway than I was getting anywhere else. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
I
That's
really did. I mean, I had so many years of not being able to be taken seriously, not being given a chance to play, not be. I mean, you can't even believe it. And it's the world is different now, but
right,
it was something else.
right,
And
right.
I thought at least if I go play in Broadway, I can get judged on my merits as a bass player and
Right,
not have to have all the other stuff.
right,
You know
right,
what I mean?
right,
But going in there, one of the things that I felt was an asset was that I played a lot of different kinds of music.
right,
Right.
My show is a very classically oriented show. You really have to be able to be a classical musician to play that show.
right.
But I think if you have, because I have other, I've, played jazz for years, and
Skill sets, yeah.
I've played a lot of early music. I've done a lot of different kinds of music. I could
Yeah,
bring that, more than just a straight classical player could. And I
yeah,
think that that's part of the whole Broadway thing too. I mean, John Beal is like that. There are a lot of bass players, a lot of commercial bass players that can do a lot of different things. And so I think that that's really important.
yeah, yeah, and probably having a good with all of that background, because I know you also have specialized also in Baroque music. If
Yeah.
I'm not if I'm not mistaken, like with all of these background, it's really important to understand who you are as a musician, and have an experience, have a career outside of this musical theater genre, and then bring these experiences in. But let's stick with the professional aspects. Tom, why don't you go next?
Yeah. Um, I think Melissa's right. I mean, I think the musicians that I see on Broadway that do Broadway are not real players
Right,
from, my perspective. Um, Cats like Irio, who I've known forever, Frankie, who I've known forever, Luiko Hopper, who I've known forever. These guys have done everything from soup to nuts.
right,
And so when they bring that to Broadway, um, they're actually, they're enhancing the Broadway experience because
exactly.
everything that you've gained and learned over the years through your experiences, you're naturally going to bring to the table when you sit in that chair.
Yeah,
So I think it's important that you have, a background that at least allow you to get a peek at different genres of music and,
right, right,
get your foot in the door.
right,
So my thing is, in terms of how I approach it, is no different from anything else. It's Broadway, but still, my experiences from working with anybody from Sinatra to Michael Jackson or anybody that you work with, that's what you bring to the table. Just
right,
like when you came in our experience,
right,
you were a young kid checking out a David Sanborn Giro concert.
right, right.
I'm not playing any differently,
Yeah,
so that's what you bring, a musicality. Everybody here on this panel is bringing to the table. And your typical Broadway players, they don't have that. You have
right,
conductors that are rehearsal pianists, never played music. They're conducting. Are
right.
you kidding me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
These are the conductors. That shit is so wrong, it's ridiculous.
yeah,
On so many levels.
yeah,
So that's what the problem is. And then you look at the pit. I'm in a pit, it's an African show. I'm the only, George, you've been there.
I know.
I'm the only face down there. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I remember, like I said, my first show, the first show that, I did was the raising situation. I remember two sisters. I'll never forget them, the Dixon sisters,
Right,
Gail and Nicole Dixon.
right,
I was 18, 19 years old.
right,
And I remember them talking about they were complaining to the union and going up and trying to fight to get, more representation into Broadway.
right.
And it was falling on deaf ears.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
here
yeah,
we are, 2020, same. It's actually worse now than it was in the 70s.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, 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 mm.
because I saw more people of color on Broadway in the 70s. I mean, I've done a few things, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, well, there was a lot of representation.
Yeah.
Victor Paz,
Right.
great, Latin players. You had everybody sitting on chairs in these shows. You
Right.
don't see that today.
Mm.
And the problem is the contractors.
Right. Right.
You
So
have shows. Yeah.
there's sort of the gatekeepers for those who don't
They're the
understand.
gatekeepers. They're the gatekeeper outers too.
Right.
Tom, if I can interject
Yeah.
Yeah.
for a second. I agree with what you're saying about with the contractors, but it's also too, you're getting a lot of really young musical directors
Yeah.
that are they these days have a little more say many times than the contractors do, and they're bringing
That's
in,
good, because I've been
they're
sitting
bringing-
down for 22 years, so I don't know. I don't know. So you would have more insight. Absolutely. Go
well,
ahead, Jerry.
they're bringing in the people that they want.
That's good.
Right. So Irio, let me ask you though. I mean, what are these items of professionalism that you think need to be in place, that need to, that make you, and also that you're looking for?
Well, I agree with everything that both Melissa and Tom have just said. Obviously, I mean, the obvious things are the, punctuality, being able to read well,
Right.
things that, that go along with any gig if you're going to be a freelancer, or a professional musician anywhere in the world. But I strongly agree with what Tom was saying about, having experience playing lots of different kinds of music with,
Right.
as many different people as possible, and just doing the what I call the crazy, New York freelance thing, at least
Oh,
what I
yeah.
used to.
Oh yeah.
Having that experience is something, as Tom said, is that you bring to the table.
Right.
And I know Tom, Winston, Melissa, you all bring that, and that is lacking. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to say it. I think that's lacking in some of the young players that I see coming into Broadway now.
Yeah.
Another thing, not that has nothing to do with the music, but being able to deal with people, and with difficult people, with certain music directors that can and people outside of
Right.
the music department that
Right.
are a big part of every Broadway show.
Oh yeah.
That you have to a little bit of grace and political awareness goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me
I can't say that I've been perfect on those fronts, but I try.
Yeah, not even like guilty as charged. I'm gonna get to you, Winston, in a second. But
No problem.
what Irio said just is really rings true.
Yep.
I mean, I've had screaming matches with, and I understand that I am hard at it. I'm not the easiest person to get along with, and I'm certainly not the easiest person to convince. If my mind is made up. But I have had screaming matches with sound people, and I've had screaming matches with stage management.
Yeah.
Last show, like, I had to tell someone, listen, you need to remember the names of the musicians that are here in this pit. Okay, there's no two ways about that, and you need to be able to pronounce a name that's perhaps not English in its origin, and you need to be able to pronounce it correctly. If I, as the black from Vienna, Austria, manage to pronounce a name correctly, you as the Midwestern American white dude, we'll get this right. Okay, there's no
Yeah.
two ways about that, right?
Yeah.
So I totally hear what Irio is saying in terms of, you know, being able to get along with people and being able to sort of you know, understand that there is a social element to this particular job, right? um I
Yeah.
also, you know,
Sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, as Winston knows, because we both also get hired as in-house contractors.
Right.
We even
Yeah.
more so have to deal with, you know, the higher ups and all
Right.
that, and have to, you know, be cool and
Yeah.
sometimes, you
Right.
know,
Just
fight
be
our
able, you know, be able to maneuver and navigate this. You know, this is one thing that Tom Barney kind of and you know, I hate to put you on the spot, Tom, but that is one thing that I definitely learned from you, to, you know, treat this as a career choice and be able to navigate, be able
Yeah.
to understand, okay, this is a situation where I have to speak out. This might be a situation where I don't have to speak out because it might
Right.
not really be all that important right now. But this situation over here, that is really important. So let me just make sure that everything is on the up and up. What that is concerned.
Yeah. I mean, you
Yeah.
learn over time and experience. You know, I fall on the knife very little these days.
Right.
You
Right.
know, but I was, you know, I'm that guy. I'll speak the truth. It doesn't, you know, because we're all here because we do what we do and we're good at what we do.
Exactly.
And so you shouldn't, you know, your caliber shouldn't be lessened because of the color of your skin,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And when you look at these situations, it's just wrong.
Right.
And, you know, the things like, you know, Irio's talking about the younger guys that are coming in and how they're doing things. I don't really know, you know. One of the guys I pulled in, he's now one of the biggest contractors.
Mm.
You know, Michael Aarons.
Right.
And, you know, I met Michael on a Liza gig, and he was a sweet kid. He was great. And I was like, man, you know, have you ever done such and such? Hooked him up with Kevin Kuhn, and the rest is history.
Right.
You know, but, you know, I told Michael too, I just told him straight up, man, you know, after he became the guy, I said, man, treat people fairly. Don't
Right.
be an asshole.
Right.
Just
Right.
treat people fairly. That's all. That's
Right.
all.
Right.
Any
Right.
of us want to be treated as fairly.
Yeah.
And give the same shot that the next guy.
Right.
It just, you know, it is what it is.
Right. Right.
So it's
Right. Right.
important
Right.
to have this forum and to talk about it and get these things out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's, you know, that's what I'm doing is Winston. Let me get
Yeah.
to you.
Well, I
You know,
mean,
items. Yeah. Go ahead.
absolutely. I mean, it's funny. You know, Tom is absolutely right. The first show that I ever did, I was hired as in-house. I didn't
Right.
even know what that meant. And you know, my late father was a diplomat, so I feel like maybe that's how it, you know, he you know, maybe it came down to just being that,
It
having that
helps.
skill, you know. And but you know, that was an important learning lesson on how to deal with people, keep
Right.
things calm,
Right.
keep a
Right.
level head, you know, and save it. I mean, you know, George, sometimes you do have to just fly off the handle every
Oh
once in a
yeah.
while,
Oh
but you
yeah.
know,
Oh yeah.
save your powder for when it's needed, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you have to play a lot of styles well, because you know, you can just be amazing at something, but then suddenly, you know, in a lot of shows you might have 8 bars of polka, 2 bars of country western, jazz, we're swinging, we're playing, and you're going to fall apart if you can't jump well and play these styles of music well. If you're
Right.
strong, an amazing jazz player, and you have no idea how to play, you know, 2-step country western for a couple bars, everyone's going to hear it,
Right.
and it's gonna slowly fall apart. You know, so be really strong, and that's just come from, you know, from playing gigs, just
Right.
playing shows,
Exactly.
playing on cruise ships, playing in bars, playing tours, recording anywhere, and just
So
having
one,
that experience.
like one of the big takeaways that I'm hearing, and it's not necessarily something that I did not know before, but I think it's also important for the audience to sort of, excuse me, to realize one of the big takeaways is understand that you are, as a freelancer, that you are responsible for um, the amount that you put in your musical bank. right?
Yeah.
You need to put stuff into your bank, and that stuff, that's, you know, call it styles, call it genres, that experience is what you draw from when you get into a theater situation. And that
Yeah.
is the same as you're saying, Winston, and the same Tom, you know, said earlier. That is the same on every gig,
Yeah.
really.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that is really important to realize. Like, you are putting, as a young musician or as a musician who already has some experience, because there are a lot of musicians out there who not necessarily, you know, who wouldn't typify as young anymore, but who have never done this job because, you know, they were like, I don't want to
Yeah.
deal with this. This is, you know, racist environment, blah, 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 blah. You know,
Yeah.
uh, they need, you know, people need to understand that this particular job requires that you come as a fully formed musician.
Right.
And that is very, very important, I believe.
And,
That's,
and
go
you know
ahead.
what, George, and I'm going to speak to the elephant in the room about it also. And
Yeah,
that is, as a Black musician,
right,
you have to be better,
right,
because, you know, if you like, there's movie actors that have made many bad movies, and
right,
they continue to get those opportunities.
right,
But if Denzel makes a bad movie, he's done.
right,
So he has to have that quality, has to be high.
right,
So when you're, you know, Broadway, yeah, everybody should play well, of course.
right,
But if you're, you know, talking about representation,
right,
you've
Right.
got to make sure you don't make any mistakes,
right,
because you're not going to get the opportunity again to,
right.
oh, well, he blew that, where we'll call him for some. No, you're toast. So, you
Yeah,
know, if you're doing that, you know, be prepared, be ready to play really on a high level, so that no one can say, well, you know, he's, no, none of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You
You
can't
know,
afford it. You can't afford it. And it's not only that you can't afford it, but you can't afford it for the person
yeah,
who's going to come after you,
yeah,
Right.
right?
Right.
Understand this. Like, when I learned the show, Tom played it, he set an expectation of where my playing needed to be. And I needed
right,
to rise to that expectation. I needed to get to that level. I totally understood that. And I'm trying to do, I don't want to put myself in the same category as Tom because I respect him too much. But I am trying to do the same thing with my shows and with the people that, you know, sub for me.
yeah,
It is important to, like, all your, what's the saying? Your eyes need to, your T's need to be crossed and your eyes
yeah,
need to
yeah,
be dotted, whatever. You know, it,
yeah,
there cannot be any ambiguity, or anything like that. There cannot, you know, you cannot rely on, well, I know this one here really well and I know that one here really well, so I'm always going to have a job.
yeah,
It doesn't work, you know. And I would imagine it's the same for someone like Melissa, who, you know, is in an incredibly exposed situation.
sure,
Understand this, like, many years, this show is huge, right?
right,
Mhm.
People, there are two shows, perhaps maybe three, right? Two, maybe three shows that people associate with New York: Phantom, Lion King, and now perhaps Wicked.
yeah,
Mhm.
So, you know, that's, those are givens, okay? So it's very important for people to understand, and here's where I'm repeating myself so people in the audience can understand this. Like, it is important to see yourself represented, and this is the reason why we are doing these panels. It's important to, you know, even if you're coming here as a tourist, or if you're coming here as someone who's trying to get into this scene, into the music scene. um, if you're in a theater and you look into the pit and you see nothing but a sea of white and male, it's going to be, you know, damn difficult to see yourself represented in that, and it's going to be very difficult to say, okay, well, I think I can do this, right? So that's why this panel is here, and that's why, you know, all of these questions that I'm badgering people with.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing too.
Yeah,
It kind of cross pollinates because, at the end of the day, Irio was speaking on the younger guys that are coming in, but there's an old issue that has never been resolved, and that is the union.
Right.
And the union has never dealt with this on a serious level. Never. I remember doing contracting for a lot of records, hip hop stuff, and they missed the boat on a couple of things. And I'm just get off the subject for a second. Is with hip hop,
right,
and video games. Huge billion-dollar industries, both of them.
Right.
And they ignored them because of their arrogance. They only cared about Broadway, Stephanie's, the Philharmonic, the Met, and Radio City, and television.
Yeah.
That was it. They didn't care about anything or anybody else. And so, so for me, that's a big problem. And,
right.
I think we have to go back and dig deeper as to the causation of a lot of what's going on today.
Right.
And so, and it's opportunity.
Right.
I've been on you guys are talking about these contractors and stuff. I've been on film days with the same contractors, and this rumors going on, people of color can't read, that kind of stupid shit.
Yeah.
That's some old bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And look, when you're 2020, look what still dealing with the same stupid shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to say the same thing. Like this has been going on for a
Black folks can't read. It's just ridiculous. It's just
the hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an, I got into a lot of trouble with one of the contractors because I tried to get a female sub on one of my shows.
Yeah.
Where we were told we were not supposed to get female subs because the
women can't play the bass.
Well,
it's ludicrous.
It even went a little further than that because there were no professional musicians at the time. That was the explanation. No professional female musicians at the time.
Right.
I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna. No, I cannot do that. So of course I tried to get a female bass player to sub for me, and was shut down and was screamed at for an hour and a half. And the guy, has never talked to me again, and blah 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 blah. That is out there, and understand
it's real.
That is real. That is very real. Understand that this particular person will probably try to keep me from having other jobs.
That's right.
That speaks to Winston's point that my output needs to be so strong, simply because I will not give an inch to those kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Discriminatory hiring practices.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, if you don't have opportunity, it's very difficult because the guard doesn't change. You know what I'm saying? We change. I'm at a point now. I'm pretty much I'm retired or whatever. Irio, everybody in this panel, we're not too far behind that moment. In terms of, but we change. But the mentality and the culture that's in the business, that's infested, in the business, it doesn't change. That's the problem.
Right.
And so until you address the issues, I had a email from Disney talking about cultural diversity. I've been on the show 22 years. Now they're talking about cultural diversity? Are you kidding me? This is the problem.
Exactly.
And we can laugh about it, but these folks have no intention of leveling the playing field.
Right.
And I don't have any answers. I just did the best I could, and I try to pay it forward. George, you're doing the same. I think everybody on this panel is doing the same. That's the only thing we can do is pay it forward until the opportunities finally arise where, some kind of equality is going to happen.
Where it's more balanced.
More balanced. Yeah.
More balanced than what it is now. The one thing like that, again, like that is part of the thing of how at least I'm trying to influence this narrative is by showing people that, check this out, here we are. These are the players. We are doing this. There is a place for you here. And at least let people know that, even though if you were to go by the union newspaper, or if you were to go by media outlets, etc., you would never see, you know, a black face as the face, or a female face for that matter, as the face of Broadway musicians. Now it's perhaps starting to change, but you know, it remains to be seen how far that goes. Um, Part of this is to let people know that no, you are represented, and therefore there is a place for you right here. Okay, therefore you should, you know, reach out, you should cold call, you should do all these things, you should see who's in your environment, who is already playing the gigs, you know, make the connections. 2 weeks ago with the first panel, Conrad Adderley said something that I thought was really profound, and that was, try to get to know the players outside of the theater environment.
Yes.
Like, see, where are the gigs? Are they playing any gigs, right? And really find out, okay, well, who is this player? You know, this is an important, I thought that was a very, very important point to make, simply because it helps it helps with the understanding that this is part of the freelance workload that exists. And for players like us, we also have to claim it, you know, with the full understanding that we're going to have everything and the kitchen sink thrown at us to keep us out.
That's right.
Okay? That you know, but that cannot discourage you. Discourage you. So before let me just post one more question, and that is because, you know, I have a group of bass players here, and I think it would be really important and really necessary to let the bass players out there understand your concepts of sound production. And I'm so glad, I'm so happy that we're all like different bass players, like we have different backgrounds, right? Sound production. Let me know, what do you understand under sound production, especially in this particular environment, in this musical theater situation. Irio, why don't you go first?
Well, for me, you know, I like a warm, fat sound with a lot of clarity. And when I say clarity, I don't mean brightness. I mean clarity, that you can hear the notes that I'm playing.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why, and this is not a plug, but I'm saying it, I play Sadowski basses. I've
Right.
known Roger for over 30 years. You know, he used to work on my basses back in the day before I bought one of his. And I like that sound.
Right.
It's, you know, it's got a lot of punch, it's got a lot of clarity, but it's also warm and fat. And that's the sound that I go for. But now also, you know, depending on the music that I'm playing, you know, that can change, because I also have, you know, my Fender P bass with flat wounds and
Right.
you know,
Right.
foam under the bridge.
Right.
So if I'm doing, you know, something that's more in the Motown James Jamerson vein, I can use that. I sometimes use that too for playing some Latin things to get more of a baby bass sound.
Right.
You know, because
right.
I'm not a real upright player, unfortunately.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
play
Right.
a little upright, but it's nothing like you and Tom and Melissa.
Right.
And I think, Winston, you play upright too.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I have my basic sound that I like, but I'll, you know, change it to fit
The
musically
music environment. Yeah.
right, the
Yeah.
musical
Yeah.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Very good insight. Melissa, let me ask you, sound production. Your show is predominantly, if I went down to see it, to watch it once. I believe it's only upright. Is that right?
Yes, it
Yeah.
actually it pays a double, and there are some things written for electric bass in there, but you can't possibly get from one to
Right.
so they dispensed with that, you know, long
Right.
before I got there.
Right.
My show is old school. I mean,
Old school.
we don't have any mixes or anything like that. This is just like playing in a pit in an orchestra, you know. I have no control over my sound, okay, except what I do. Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
myself. So
Right.
that means I've got to put out a sound because this show, the whole show rests on the bass. I mean,
Right.
that's the truth. I mean, there's no drum set. It's just percussion. So it's it's this the whole thing is on the show, and you play really basically from the beginning to the end.
Mm.
So you got to be there. I mean, you've got to be there, and you got to play with strength and also dynamics and feeling and all that stuff. You got to be in the show. I mean, that's the one thing what I try to do is just be in there from the beginning of the show to the end of the show. I mean, I
Right.
don't do anything else. I don't look at my phone. I don't read even. I used to read. I don't even do that anymore. I'm so into that place because Frank, I mean, it's important to me. And
Right.
I also can't afford to I can't afford to make a mistake, honestly, because this stuff is very tense.
It's
But
exactly what we
I
were
really
talking about.
believe in it.
Yeah.
I believe in it. I want the show to be great. I know I can help make that show be great, and
Mm.
I want to do that. I don't want to, sit around and
Yeah, but Melissa, you know what great is.
yeah. Well, thank you for
There's a,
saying
there's folks that have no clue,
that. That's
and
true.
some of them hold batons.
And that's the thing about it is that
So
I was thinking
yeah,
also is that stuff happens on Broadway that can't happen in other situations, like a jazz situation, for instance, because if you play jazz, everybody can hear. You
Right.
can't say,
right,
so and so is playing badly, or they're playing out of tune, or the vibrato is whatever.
Mm.
You can't do a musical assassination of somebody when people can hear and they can,
right.
and they're listening. But
Right.
there are a whole lot of people on Broadway that don't listen and
That's
Don't
right.
listen.
can't hear, and they listen to what people say. They listen to people talk. They don't actually listen to the music,
Mm.
So, and you can convince them of, and I've seen them do that to musicians, and it's I mean, actually, that happened to Gail Dixon. Gail was in my,
Yeah,
and
Mm.
some people started saying she was
saying right,
a beautiful player. I
exactly,
sat right next to that woman. I mean,
right.
she played perfectly in tune, gorgeous sound. I mean, she was just wonderful. It
Mm.
was
But
my
yeah,
honor to be able to sit next to her.
Mm.
And they talked about her, and people believed that.
exactly.
Couldn't. It was beyond my comprehension, but I saw it happen.
But yeah, exactly. You see it happen firsthand, and people's careers are destroyed because of just bullshit.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
it's real.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
I'm sure we all have those experiences, and it's just a matter of how you deal with it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. Sound production, Tom. What comes to mind when you think of sound production in this situation?
Pretty much, what's been said before. Irio's talking about make sure you have a clear sound. I think idiom has a lot to do with it too, because basically, if you're playing country music, something like that, which I've worked with a lot of country artists. The things that we were talking about, not necessarily bright but clear sound, it tends to change. So you have to know where you are at all
Right.
times and what you're dealing with. And so your sound can change from time to time depending on the idiom in which you're playing in.
Right. Right.
So as far as acoustic bass, I just when you grow up in it, it's hard to explain. It's
Right.
like yourself, George. You grew up, you grew up around your dad.
Right. 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 I do.
Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying. Well, for me,
Yeah.
one thing that was really important, like my introduction to you was, back when I was a teenager and I saw you on that David Sanborn gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
Buddy Williams was playing drums.
Hiram.
Hiram was playing guitar.
Yeah.
Don Elias was the percussion player. All
Yeah.
of that, right?
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't necessarily have any idea of what I was going to do. Oh, and we have a guest. Let me see who this guest is. Just give me a second. This is gonna be interesting. Buddy Williams.
But Boudoir.
buddy.
TB!
My brother.
Mercury's in retrograde. What can I say? You got a drummer pressing buttons. You know, I'm a Neanderthal. 2 pieces of wood and a stick, you know, and a skin. Don't make it no more elaborate than that, bro.
Yeah.
Guys, y'all got 4 strings. I can't mess with it. Oh, and some of us have 5 or 6.
Yes.
Let's not forget about our boy with the 11 string, baby. Golly, Al.
Okay.
That's
Well,
amazing.
You know, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Hold it.
No complaints. I'm enjoying it. I sitting there watching y'all keeping time. I got the best seat in the house. How y'all doing?
We're all great. We're doing great. We're just talking about sound production, and Winston was about to share his thoughts of sound production, you know, from the bass perspective in a musical theater situation.
Oh,
you know,
great.
I guess I can only speak to like the show I'm doing right now. For instance, Tina, we're playing. I'm representing the bass from the 50s to now. So it's I tended to go for having different instruments for that kind of represented the era. So, you know, a real flat wound, old school, passive, full sound for, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s jazz, and then up to Sadowski, active, powerful, broad, high, you know, high fidelity, you know, kind of sound. And also, I mean, I've been fortunate that I've had a good relationship with the sound guys and the sound designers. So I haven't had that, you know, I've basically kind of given them the chord. It's like, here, take that. And it's kind of on me to make sure that doesn't go, you know, badly. And also, you know, knowing that sometimes also with theater, sometimes, you know, sometimes you just can't get what you want. Sometimes the bass is, you're playing some real big thunderous part, and then, you know, you go out and you're like, oh, it's that small. The vocals are crushing it or something. You know, you can't win all the time, but you know, I try anyway. And I guess for me, it's more of a more being authentic to the style that I have to play at that time.
Right. I mean, just
you
look
know,
at. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was going to say, you know, Winston hit on something that was really interesting because Irio, everybody's talking about the sound, but at the end of the day, front of house is controlling everything.
Right.
So that if you know, and it's not like when we're on tour with whomever, Giro, whomever, you're working with front of house engineers that are world class. These guys in these theaters, these front of house engineers, they're not front of house engineers.
Yeah, that is, you know.
And so what you put in, you're not necessarily getting out. And so therein lies the problem, because we all spend years developing our own sounds.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when you go out into the house and listen to a show, man.
I think one thing to keep in, you know.
Don't start.
You know, it's crazy, man.
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is also like, you know, take a situation like, you know, you're touring, like, or you're playing, right? And you're dealing with someone who does front of house, you know, in a musical setting where the concert itself has 100% priority, right? Now, in the musical theater setting, and, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily think that way, but in a musical theater setting, those front of house people, they have a different set of parameters. That is just in the nature of what they do. Like, they have different set of parameters, different set of priorities, right? Now, within those priorities, again, this is, you know, coming from the person who will scream at the sound guy. Within those priorities, thank you. Is it possible to sort of be able to get the best of both worlds? In my opinion, yes.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
And you know, if anything, the nice thing about this particular panel is that we have an incredibly robust and diverse output, you know, represented right here, from the mostly classical to the mostly, you know, electric bass oriented stuff. The only thing that is missing is, and we had that last week, or I should say 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Now we have bass players who actually also incorporate synth bass into their setup, you know.
Right,
So
Right.
right.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it adds
yeah.
another layer, adds
Yeah.
another texture,
Absolutely.
adds another sound, you know, also adds another cost point. Let's
Yeah,
not forget that. Uh,
yeah.
so it is important to kind of to realize that, you know, bring your authentic self to the sound discussion. Understand that the priorities for front of house in a theater setting are probably different priorities, and try to work it that way, you know, as
Hmm.
opposed to, you know, and I'm guilty as charged. Like with my first show, I was like, what do you mean you can't turn the bass up? Are you crazy?
Right,
You know, like,
I've had that same argument with a sound designer. It's like, you know, I need to hear myself in order for me to give
Exactly.
my, you know,
right,
it's
Right.
really helpful.
Right.
right, right,
And
right,
getting that through a certain sound designer was a difficult thing.
right,
I think all of us here, you know, that play shows understand that the priority isn't the orchestra.
Right.
You know,
right,
we're
Nope.
not the stage. It's not the Philharmonic. It's not, you know, a pop gig or jazz gig where everybody's there to hear the band. We know that the
right,
Yeah.
priority is the stage.
right.
But by the same token, it is called a musical, you know,
Right.
and it would be really nice to go out into the house and, you know, even understanding that the priority is the vocalist on what's going on stage, the vocalist, you know, and the dialogue. But when
Right.
the
Yeah.
music comes, to actually hear the music,
Right.
you know, be able to
Yeah.
hear, you know, I'll never forget, you know, how many, I can't remember which show it was. I think it was The Wedding Singer that I did, where there was some, you know, some moments where there where the, you know, the musical director was on us for these very subtle little things, you know, and you know, over the headphones when everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing, it sounded great. And I remember I had to take off because I cut my finger, so I gave a bunch of shows to a friend of mine, and I actually decided to go and watch the show. And man, all those little subtle things that we had spent all this time working on, any of them.
Wrong.
Right. Right.
Eh.
Nothing.
Nothing. Right. Exactly. Yeah, and they'll
Mm.
spend hours, you know, on this kind of stuff, you know, and when you go out now, you hear nothing.
Right.
So one of the other things too, you know, that I don't really give them a pass on in terms of that area, when you're on tour and you're doing these things, you got to you're in a different venue every night.
Yeah.
Right.
And so these front house engineers make it sound pristine every night. On Broadway, we're in a location. It's stagnant. It doesn't move.
Right.
So how hard is it to figure out all those things that you're talking about? Because the main focus is on the stage.
Right.
You should be able to, you know, at some level, be able to blend the two to make it sound decent or good.
Yeah.
They spend, you know, a lot of these houses don't put the money into the sound system, so what you get in is relatively crappy anyway.
Right.
But you're sitting in the same house for 22 years or however long your show's been running. Come on.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
you know, it's difficult because, you know, when you come from a pop perspective, and this is why maybe also Broadway is not for everyone a lot of times.
Yeah.
Is, you know, if I play in a band, you know, right a minute before we go on stage, I might be like, you know, I think I'll change my shirt. You know, and they'll
Right.
you know, that's too bad. We'll just hold the show.
right.
You know, I'm going to try on another pair of shoes or whatever. But, you know, Broadway, they'll start without you.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, if it's a 9 a.m. rehearsal
Right.
at Carol, you know, the baton will drop. If you're stuck in the elevator, this is a start. I mean, so you have to have that balance of like, it's about me. It's not at all about me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm valuable to this. I'm completely disposable, you know, and find your comfort spot where you can, you know, exist and not be hurt by all of this nonsense that goes on,
Yeah.
and find that beauty and like, okay, that's good. that
Yeah.
works for me. You know,
Right.
and I'll let this go. This is this is something I need to make a stand and fight for, and other things, okay.
Right. That is good insight as well.
Absolutely.
Buddy, let me ask you about, being valuable.
Uh-oh. Don't start. Joseph Jobert's gonna call right away.
No, this is, it's all good. It's all good.
I know.
Being valuable. What is the value of the bass for you in this musical theater setting? Do you see, let me just, sorry to give you some analysis beforehand, but do you
Please.
see this differently? Do you see it the same? And again, the reason why I'm asking you in particular this is because you have credits many pages long. So if it it would behoove us all to listen to someone with experience, and you got it, you got a lot of that.
The three shows that the Color Purple, the original Color Purple, Motown, and then recently with Bet,
Right.
Hello Dolly.
Right.
The bass and the drums were the Color Purple. The thump, the drums and the thump. It went from the, what's that thing, with the tub, and y'all had the broomstick handle,
The
and
wash
Wash
tub
Yeah.
wash
bass,
tub
yeah.
sound, all the way to like you said, the radio sound, and that. It was very important that the bass and the drums, they, as we all brought out in our conversation of the sound designers and the thing to make it, and you sit in the house and it sounds like, anyway, be nice, buddy. But the bass is very important to bass and drums. That's the hand and glove, left hand, right hand, thumb and index. You can't do it without it unless it's a drummy thing or a solo bass. Like George's show, the bass is the theme song, the
Right.
theme. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Right.
that's part of the libretto, if I
Right.
may use the word. Sorry, folks, but you know what I mean. It's part of it. That's the essence. The Temptations. That's the essence of that.
Right.
When I saw Lion King, the drums and the African spirit was so. But that's Disney and it's money, but it was part of the thing, the libretto, to get that point across. The djembes with Junior up there, you could see it in visual and you feel it. But some of those shows, like the brother said, you go in the house, you don't hear none of that.
Right.
You're like, why are we going through all of that? But to me, bass and drums has always been the foundation, whether it was the classical essence or Hello Dolly,
Right.
or the wash tub thing that I brought up, because that vibe, and the jug, it brought the thing across.
Right. So it's you cannot really extrapolate it from a sound. You cannot really take it out of a sound if you're playing this kind of music, which is already an amalgamation of everything that has come before. This kind of music, meaning musical theater type setting, musical theater
Exactly.
music, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot take the importance and the combination of the sound production for bass players. You cannot take that out. That is just not possible. Let me just, because I wanted to make this, I didn't want to make the same mistake that I did 2 weeks ago, where I let everybody else talk and I just didn't say anything. but in my experience, my first show was Spring Awakening, right? And I knew that everybody on Broadway was playing jazz basses, was playing mostly active basses. You know, they were going for a very clean sound, very direct, you know, strong fundamental, very clean, right? And I definitely very actively made a decision to go the other direction. So the first bass that I brought in to Spring Awakening was an old precision bass with flat
Mhm.
wounds. Um, I did not want too much definition. I wanted, and also, you know, our direction was it was supposed to sound like a garage band. So I was thinking, okay, a garage band, you know, people will probably come with some sort of a precision, right? And turn up, right? Um, and that was sort of my idea. It was, you know, now in hindsight, it was definitely based on the idiom. It was based on the style, on the genre of music that we were, you know, trying to portray. Um, but then again, you also had in the same show, you had upright bass, and you all of a sudden you had to play ensemble music that was really chamber music written for a chamber quartet in this case. So you had
Mhm.
to bring out the bow, you know. You had to make sure that all of your arco was correct,
Yep.
and blended well. And that is, you know, that's another thing that perhaps is overseen, you know, is overlooked, I should say, very easily. Like, you need to be able to blend, and the idea of blend, be it arco or be it the upright bass, let's just, you know, see the
Hmm.
two entities, be it the upright bass and the electric bass. The idea of blending with both of these instruments is very important. And, you know, the more
Yep.
experience you have, again, this is where the conversation kind of goes around in circles, because the
Mhm.
more experience you have, the more you'll be able to blend. The more experience you have, the more you understand, okay, this is going to work out in this particular room, right? um and to Tom's point, the more experience you have, and this is talking to the sound guys, you know, or sound departments, I should say, the more you should be really in control of your own room.
Yeah.
That is not too much to ask for. And perhaps, you know, and again, like Steve Canyon, who was the sound designer for Lady Day, um, and who is the sound designer, you know, with Ain't Too Proud. We've had fierce arguments about
Yeah.
using, you know, using a microphone or a pickup on the upright bass. And I was like, no,
Right.
you're not putting a microphone in front of my bass. It's not gonna work out.
Yeah.
I have a really good pickup. Let's use the pickup. If you don't like it, we can still change it. All right, that's what the
So
preview is there for.
my question is, what qualifications do you have to become a sound designer?
That is a
Very
good
good
question.
question, Tom.
Yeah.
You know, because these guys go from theater to theater and they control everything. So what are their qualifications? Have they spent
Mm.
some time, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
That
this whole
is.
thing is upside down, man.
Well,
Well,
interesting.
you know, I
I'm sorry.
talking about, you know,
Sorry.
sound
No, no.
designers. I'm sorry.
Melissa, go
Yeah,
ahead.
jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about my show. The the
Mhm.
original show is in England, and they
Damn.
come over. They do the sound. The sound people come from England and set up the sound. They work with us. They talk to us. They discuss what we're going to do.
Mm.
You know, beautiful sound.
Right. Right. Also, but
Sound. And then they leave.
then they leave.
Aha!
Therein lies the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Then they leave.
It's a very good setup, Melissa. Timing perfect.
Yeah,
Irio,
exactly.
what were you going to say? Sorry.
Well, no, all I was going to say is talking about. Tom mentioned, you know, sound designers. I mean, I've had sound designers, like for example, Peter Holinsky, who did one of my last show, and I'd worked with before on another show, who, you know, he would come to me and say, "What do you need?"
Mm.
You know, and like on, for example, on Once on This Island, he hooked me up. Rather than giving me the digital Avion, he gave me an analog one where he took a line right out of my my amp, where now the sound that I was hearing was a lot warmer than what you normally hear out of those little, that digital channel on the normal Avions. And I didn't ask him for that. He, we've worked together before. He did it for me, and when a sound designer asks me, what do I need? And I can say to him, I need
That's
this.
different.
Then he says, to me, well, I need this. I was like, okay, whatever, let's work it out,
Right.
But I've also had the experience on another show with the current sound designer of Winston's show, who I shall not name, who, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I'm like, I can't even hear myself. And you're asking me for all of this,
Right.
and I was going out of my way to give the guy what he wanted,
Right.
and was still like getting all of this flack. And I still was having a hard time just playing because I really couldn't hear myself the way I wanted. Also, in that particular instance too, we were getting all this direction from the musical director about dynamics, and I felt like I had to play at the same level all the time just to please the sound designer.
Right.
Okay. And and it was interesting when the first show, after that show closed and I started subbing again, the first show I subbed on, which I think was subbing for Luico at Priscilla. And, I did my first show, went well. Musical director comes over to me and says, you sound great, but we need more dynamics from you. Everything's at the same level, which I found interesting because, I've always played with dynamics. I mean, I've always, I've taught students how to go from playing really soft to really loud, just using your fingers without taking, dialing knobs. I always found being able to play with dynamics was an asset,
Right.
and on that previous show, with this particular sound designer, it wasn't,
Right.
and and when I went into Priscilla, it's like, obviously I was so used to, for 3 years of playing everything at the same level, I went in there and did exactly the same thing. And that wasn't it. That wasn't the right thing to do. So
Crazy.
I think sometimes, the other thing is, you need if you have advocates, if you have help, in Tina, we have our conductor is the music director. I mean, he's like, you do what you want to do. And, and if you have, and I got your back, it's like, I want you to do, the reason you're here is because of that. So, you have latitude sometimes, it doesn't always work out that way.
Right.
And, and maybe somebody that's given that front house sound guy a hard time, you have an ally that can push back a little bit. And other times, you just get sucked under the water there. But, it's difficult how it can,
for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
I believe, sorry to just interject that, I believe like Steve Canyon became my ally at Ain't Too Proud because of our experience at Lady Day,
Right.
and especially because of me just being so hard-headed and not giving an inch. Like, dude, if you are not going to amplify me, I will still be heard. I can play this bass so loud in this theater without amps. I can still do this. So I really, and understanding that I can do this, I can, if need be, I'll beat the shit out of my bass. But here's an option. Here's a possibility that I'm giving you, and it would behoove you to listen to me. So it was kind of level setting. I am willing to work with you. If you are going to make life difficult for me, I don't even need you. Right? And at the same time just saying, okay, but here's a possibility that can work for both of us, right? And let's try it. And if it doesn't work, egg on my face. I'll be okay with that. I'll take the heat. I'll take the hit. Not a problem. But sure enough, it worked out, and he won a Tony for the sound design. So and it was nothing like with that particular show, Lady Day. there were 3 musicians on stage. It was piano, drums, and bass, and that was it,
Yeah.
right? So no, we're not gonna have like a big microphone next to the drum set that's going to amplify more of the drum set than of my acoustic bass, no matter how hard I play.
Right.
That's just not going to happen, And that experience made it possible for him to become an ally for me, to me, at Ain't Too Proud. Right? All of a sudden, with Ain't Too Proud, you got 2.5 hours of nothing but bass. Okay, there's every cue, every underscore, everything is coming from the bass. And my ally is Steve Canyon. And understand when I'm saying this, I came with an enormous bet with him being my ally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, it made it possible for me to have this particular DI, have a particular preamp, distort my preamp, and send him that signal. With, of course, with the understanding that this would be an authentic sound. I've said enough, buddy. Your 2 cents,
Sir.
What do you have
Say
to
it again,
add
George.
what do you have to add to this?
We need all y'all. All y'all need a raise. Especially my homegirl that has been at Phantom. If they
Yes.
didn't have her,
Yes.
I'd help them.
Yes.
I've been there 3 times just to check it out. But getting back to getting back to the beginning, like you said, Ain't Too Proud is Jameson. Come on, that the Temptations music, that genre, that series of music. Yeah, the bass was enhanced, but so was sorry, the bass at Motown.
Right.
But you have these sound guys, like you said, these sound guys that, as Tom said, is not it's a shop guy. It's not an artist. It's not a sound artist. And luckily, you do have those guys like the Steve Canyons, but you had to teach him.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. No,
You
I
had
had
to
to.
spank him and teach him.
I had to stand up for myself, and
Yeah.
that was a very, very important moment in my relationship with Steve, in my relationship with myself, and understanding that, wait a second, I'm a bass player with 20 something years under my belt at this point, 20 years of playing upright bass on 2 continents of this planet.
Exactly.
Right.
I know what I'm talking about. Like,
Well,
that,
I think it's just sometimes these guys, they have no respect. They really
exactly.
That's what it boils down to. They don't have the knowledge, but along with not having the knowledge, they don't respect your years of collection. In terms of information.
Right.
Everybody on this panel has been doing it for quite a long time.
Oh, yeah.
The last thing you need to hear is from a sound designer to tell you how your instrument is supposed to sound. If you don't know what your instrument is supposed to sound like by now, you don't belong there.
Right.
But you have these guys that, it's crazy, man.
It's also evolving too, because in back in the days of especially recording and stuff, you just walk in and they just here's your chord, plug in here, and there's no discussion. It's just we're doing this quick. Now we're going through time where now we're getting more of an understanding of what we want. We're having more gear, and it's like people have home studios now and things. They're like, wait a second, I'm not going to put up with that necessarily anymore. Where it's just like, I get a chord, I plug in, and I don't get a chance to go in the control room and hear it. Now it's like, no, I have a real clear idea of what I want this to sound like.
Right.
Sure.
And it may be a little bit off of your, what you're thinking of.
Right. We had a situation, and we're getting close to wrapping this up, but very quickly, we had a situation with Fun Home, for instance. At Fun Home, I was playing 5 basses. Upright, fretted 5-string, fretless 5-string, precision Hafner, and there was a distinct character of live. Each bass and especially live music, like live playing, right? Because we were trying to recreate music from the 70s. Like, there was a bunch of people in a studio playing live, right? It was not piecemeal stuff. It was not just written for this, that, and the other. So my off-Broadway, my setup was, of course, DI was important, right? But then at the same time, I also had a distorted Ampeg,
Yeah.
410 speaker and like an SVT. It was like it was not subtle. and sure enough, there was considerable pushback. There was no two ways about that. Nevertheless, the show all of a sudden, and it could be debatable to say whether this had something to do with my choices in terms of amplification, but I believe that my choices influenced this. All of a sudden, the show was supposed to run for 5 weeks, and it ran off Broadway for 5 months. All of a sudden, people were vibing on this music that was completely new to them, without understanding that, oh, wait a second, why does this feel so familiar? Why does this music bring me back to a particular piece, a particular period in time like that instantly, right? And I believe that the bass sound, bass texture, bass sound production has a lot to do with that. And these are thoughts that we as players, as Black players, as female players, definitely have to think about much more than the white counterparts. Again, this ties in with what we talked about earlier. Like, we cannot afford to just come in with a so-so sounding instrument. No, it has to be really good. Sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
I have a worldwide reputation for having problems with sound men.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I've been through it. I've been fired from gigs for having problems with sound men. I have been barred from even venues from having problems with sound men. And all I really ever want is for somebody to do their job. That's all.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
The thing is, there are a lot of, as a woman, I will just say there are a lot of men that do not want to take any orders or listen to what a woman has to say, period.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
and I believe that's really the root of the problem. I mean,
Right.
but, and it's the same thing, just like you say, respect, whatever. We all have to, get to that thing. And you say you're hard-headed, we got to do that. But the real thing is, and I heard you talking about it last week, you play with the strings high. I play with the strings high because I got to be able to do it regardless of what anybody is doing out there.
Right.
And I
Right.
have to do it for the orchestra, and I have to do it for the people on the stage.
Exactly.
And whatever happens out there, I really have no control over that ultimately.
Yeah. Right.
I think Melissa has a point, which is, there's something to be said for that. Tina, our front house sound, man, is a woman. So,
right.
and,
Julie, I know her.
It's a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing because, it sounds great.
Oh yeah.
That's
We
it.
had Karen Ford. Karen Ford was at The Color Purple, and she was at Bet, and that sister, she did a wonderful job. You know what I mean? We had a problem at Motown with the hot dog there, whose name will not be spoken on our wonderful program. And I'm sure y'all, being experienced Broadway folks, you know who that clown was. But Mr. Gordy was the one that cracked the whip on all of them and said, I want this to sound like this. And he was very much a part of what George and Melissa said. He knew what he wanted. They didn't. They needed to respect him because it was his party, his show, and he knew what he was talking about. And nobody was giving him no drama. And so the drums, the bass, everything had to be perfect. I mean, like, I went on that gig. I didn't know a lot of those songs had an upright bass in those early Smoky tunes, until I actually, as a kid, you just heard it and danced to it. But when we did the musicology part of it, that was amazing, but
Oh, Buddy, your video just turned itself off. So
Yeah, this thing is saying Zoom meeting. I told you this thing is.
Oh,
No,
we lost him.
Oh man.
Buddy,
Buddy.
please sign back in. Anyway, listen, let me just you know, we're getting close to finishing this up, and once again I wanna thank you all for making yourselves available. I think this is an important this is an important conversation that needs to be had. It is important to represent. It is important for people to see themselves represented in us, and therefore it's important that you guys are here, and you guys and lady, I should say. I'm trying to get out of this habit of always just calling everybody guy. It's just weird. Wait a second, Buddy is back. Buddy, what happened? No.
But he's gonna have a sandwich.
It's
No,
it's all
I
good.
said Mr. Gordy's name, and then look what happened.
Yeah.
That's control right there. Talking about
Yeah.
controlling the network and the universe.
Ooh, this.
But it was
you
true
have-
though. I'm sorry, gentlemen and lady. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, all good, all good. Listen, passing, final words. Let's start. Tom, what are your final thoughts? What are your final words? What do you want to leave people with?
I just think, all of us here on the panel should just try to pay it forward as best you can. And do whatever you can to, just stick a larger shoe in the door, to make it a little wider for other people to have opportunities.
Right.
Because that's the thing that's lacking. It's just opportunity. You have the talent out there, but you're playing in a closed, a good old boys club. It's difficult.
Right.
So everybody here is aware of that, and just do what you can to pay it forward.
Right. Irio.
I agree. Same, the same. And I for Melissa, in the past couple of years, I've been more and more being contacted by female bass players, wanting to either study or check out, come in and watch a book or just sit and talk with me. And I've been very open to them because I think it's a really nice trend to see. So
yeah, it's also a representation of what life is about. Let's not forget that life is not a good old boys club, and
Right.
never has been. It never was, right?
Yeah, the music business has been a good old boys club for a long time, and I feel strongly that it's long overdue for that to change.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Winston, go ahead.
Well, my first show was Broadway show. I never subbed for anybody. I never had a network, of people. When I did the off Broadway version, I called everybody, and no one would do the show because they were like, "Oh, this off Broadway doesn't pay enough." And then when I started playing on Broadway, it was the exact opposite. And I'm like, I don't have that background. So everybody that I've talked to and everybody I've used are people that are fresh. And you have to have some opportunity. You have to start somewhere. It's like any gig. You have to start somewhere. You have to fall on your face. You have to do something. So I encourage people, I go out to clubs. I go through Harlem and go to bars, like I'll check people out, and I'll take a shot at new people and keep that freshness there.
Right.
You have to start somewhere. So pay it forward, try to help other people out, and it'll all work out, hopefully,
Right. Melissa.
Well, I mean, absolutely what everybody's saying, it's interestingly enough, the people that have been the most successful subs by and large at my show have been women.
Check that out.
I will tell you, I mean, I'm honestly, it's been, when you're in a show for 20 years, a lot of stuff happens, right? And I had times when I couldn't get any sub through. I don't care what's happening. I mean, they were just going to shoot down anybody. There was no way anybody was going to get hired. These things happen over the course of time on shows.
Yeah.
And but what I will say is that in general, I have found that women have a tendency to listen. I mean, they want to know what I have to say. You know, they don't just say, "Oh, I got this. Don't worry about it." You know, they want to. You know, they take the time. They want to. You know, ask me questions, try to figure it. And a lot of times, men don't do that, and I think it's to their detriment. Honestly.
Sure. I agree.
Very interesting. That's a deep point. That is a really deep point. All right, buddy.
That's that chromosome, sis. That's that chromosome.
I'm just saying.
Knucklehead. No, you saying it right. Knucklehead boys. I'll say it. We all said the old boys club. Sorry, the old man's talking. Knucklehead boys. Speak. You got it. Why do they call it Mother Nature? They don't call it Father Nature. Mom always has to remind you who's the mama. So don't change. Thank you, everybody. Listen, my champion was always a bass player. Bob Cranshaw, Walter Booker. The bass is your friend, as they would say. You know, like they say, the click is your friend. The bass has always been my friend. Barney, come on. Wilbur Bascom.
Yep.
Right.
Listen, come on.
Sorry, not to interject, but
no, you're good.
George, you have to get Luico on. You know,
I know.
Absolutely.
Hopper.
Definitely.
It's hard to get him.
And a Wilbur. And Wilbur.
Oh yeah. No, I reached out
guys,
to all of them. You know, I'm working on that for sure. It's, you know, schedules are what they are, you know.
Sure.
I think Luico might be on the other side of the continent right now. I don't know whether he's still on the East Coast.
No. He's in Vegas, but
Vegas.
If you need if you need me to reach out, it's not a problem, man. Wilbur.
That's a monstrous bass player. Ooh.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, this, you know, not for nothing. My late brother, we had, you know, favorite albums, right? His favorite album growing up was the Hair movie soundtrack. Wilbur. That's Wilbur. Like,
yes, sir.
You know what I mean? Like,
this
is really deep, and you know, and again, I'm gonna repeat myself, and hopefully for the last time. But it is important to represent, right, and be seen, to show yourself and be seen as someone who, you know, does this type of work, right? And for me, you know, between Tom and Buddy, that kind of sparked my, you know, that put the spark in me as a teenager, right? And be like, oh, this is something I could do this, right? For somebody else, it will be the album, the Hair movie soundtrack with Wilbur playing the bass, right? For somebody else, it will be seeing this panel or listening to this panel and saying, wait a second, I want to be a professional musician, or I am a professional musician, and here are like minds, right? And here's like, see how serious this is really being taken. This is very important, right? There is nothing here that's just left up to chance. I hate that idea very much, and it is something that is sort of a stereotype that's very easily put on black musician and not white, not male musicians, where it's just left up to chance, you know. Well, she just sounds like that, right? No, those are all choices. Those are all those are end results of particular choices that a particular musician has made, right? And these panels, you know, just like all of the opinions that are being voiced here, are part of these choices, and it's very important, in my opinion, in my experience, to understand that these choices are being made in a very distinct way. Like this is not, you know, we're not leaving stuff up to chance. Like we are working our profession, and we're working it, you know, at the highest possible level for the most possible years. It would behoove everyone to listen to us.
Yes.
Just saying, you know, just saying. Important. So, as I said, like before, we've been on for almost 2 hours now. I want to thank you all for making, you know, this time available. I think this is really important. This is good information that's being put out there. And you know, stay sane. As difficult as it is, you know, stay sane, you know, and go vote. This, you know, we cannot possibly not vote this time around. This is not not a possibility, not an option, you know. And as I say every week, I want to, you know, I'm going to say goodbye now to everyone here in the panel. So
all right,
take
guys.
it easy.
Pleasure,
Yes.
man.
Thank you, George.
You're all,
George.
you're all very, very welcome.
Yes.
Good to
Great
see y'all, family. Good to
Great to
see
see
you.
everybody
Good to see
here.
you.
Absolutely.
All
Good
right.
to see you.
Yes.
Boudoir.
Yeah, my man.
Yeah.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you.
Yes. Much
As I
respect for
say,
everybody.
as I say every week, be kind, be cool, and remember we only have each other. All right, I'll see you all next week.
All right.
Later.
All right. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.